So, Prashant, how boring has this international break been?
Well, I thought it would be boring, but it wasn't because I went out for a vacation, a mini vacation sort of, and that helped.
Wow, you actually got to go out.
Yeah, talking about perfect timing,
I haven't been that lucky.
and plus now that the week has started again, and then I got to see Thomas Partey in Arsenal shirt.
Yeah, that was a good deadline day signing.
Yeah, very necessary.
All right, welcome to episode 3 of Fantasy and the Premier League podcast. This is me, Omkar, and I have Prashant with me here.
Hello.
And today, for this episode, we decided to do something different since we are called Fantasy and the Premier League. We decided to look at the Premier League aspect a little bit more. Today, we are not going to talk about fantasy as such. We are going to talk more about how the Premier League has been in the opening 4 game weeks, especially having a look at how the players have performed, which teams have done well, which teams have not done so well, and we also decided to have a look at the transfer window, which team has had a good window, which team has had a bad window, things like that.
Right.
So let's head into it right away. Prashant, I would like to know which player, according to you, has had a really good start to the season.
It's been such an extraordinary season, isn't it? There have been lots of players, to be honest, who have impressed. I'd go down to the bottom half of the Premier League table and point out Leandro Trossard.
Right.
Injuries last season impacted him, but even then, before the injury hit him, he looked quite a good player. And this season, playing alongside Mope and in the same wing as Lamptey, he's been very good and unlucky to not score against United. He hit the post about I think 4 to 5 times. Very unlucky.
Yeah.
His 3 shots per 90 minutes, I think, is underrated too. Very key player for Brighton, I think, alongside Ben White,
Yeah.
Lewis Dunk, and Neil Mope. So Trossard, if he is injury free, is the one to look out for, in my opinion. The other one is Mikel Antonio.
Hmm.
Oh, apart from the first game, where whole West Ham United team were lackluster, but in the second game against Arsenal, I saw him, and he held up the play all by himself and gave a very hard time to Gabriel.
Yeah.
He's a nightmare, to be honest, for the centre backs.
Yeah. He has the physique and
He has the physique and he runs. He holds up the play for the wingers and for the midfielders to come up into the game. And David Moyes has set up the West Ham team in and around Mikel Antonio, so to speak. When West Ham defend the set pieces and they clear the balls, Antonio is the first one to pick up the ball
yeah.
and he holds up the play so well. It's evident by the way they have been playing after the Arsenal game, which I think they were very unlucky to lose that game. But after that, against Wolves, they scored four, and Leicester, they scored three. It's a very bright sign for West Ham United,
Yeah.
I would say, because at the start of the season, we really didn't give them a chance, to be honest.
Yeah, given the circumstances, I mean the way West Ham have performed, especially the game against Wolves and then scoring 3 against Leicester. In particular, along with Antonio, I think Jared Bowen and Pablo Fernandes have also really come into their own. Like the last 2 games, especially, both of them are scoring goals and assisting each other. And yeah, I mean, David Moyes seems to have found out a way of getting this incoherent squad to somehow play some good football and be competitive.
Yeah, most definitely. Antonio, to his credit and to David Moyes' credit, has had almost 4 shots per 90 minutes.
Yeah.
That's an incredible stat for someone who is playing for West Ham United. No hard feelings here, but it's incredible. I'm genuinely surprised that no other Premier League team, not the top six teams, but other Premier League teams haven't looked at Antonio and thought, let's go for him. Because even in last previous seasons for West Ham United, Antonio has been brilliant.
He's just one of those guys who, coming from the championship,
Yeah.
and he came as a right winger who could also play at right back,
Hmm.
and then who could also slot in behind the striker or play the main forward. He came in as like sort of a utility squad player,
Yeah.
but he's really grown into that role of the center forward,
Yep.
and he's literally carried this West Ham team for the last 2 years, I think, along with Declan Rice.
Yeah. Declan Rice is another important player for them. It's credit to them that they managed to keep him.
Yeah, probably not for long.
The other player I would like to point out is James Rodriguez. We all know how good James Rodriguez is, but he wasn't playing, at least for about a couple of years. I mean to say regularly.
Hmm.
And if it were normal circumstances, I don't think James Rodriguez would have signed for Everton. It's only because of Carlo Ancelotti that James Rodriguez has signed for Everton, and
Hmm.
it has given them so much of lift.
Yeah.
And look at Calvert Lewin and how he's playing and how much goal scoring opportunities he's been getting because of the passes, goal scoring opportunities that Rodriguez has been creating. He's been creating 3.17 scoring opportunities per 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's
That's phenomenal.
yeah.
And along with that, he's taking 3 shots per 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. I did not think he would be able to maintain it in the physicality of the Premier League. I don't. It's still early days, but
Yeah.
looks pretty bright from.
No, he looks absolutely. It feels as if he's been playing there for 3 4 years. It feels as if he's
Yeah,
been there forever. He's come in and he's just immediately had such a brilliant impact on the team.
yeah,
I mean, just look at Calvert Lewin, the kind of run that he had at the end of last season. He didn't score for 10 odd games, and suddenly he looks like the ball hits him and it goes into the back of the net every
yeah,
time. He's playing at an incredible xG of 4.4,
yeah.
and he has 6 goals to his name. It just seems like, with Everton, the kind of signings they've made, the kind of transfer window they've had, and especially with James Rodriguez, it's given Calvert Lewin such an uplift. His overall game seems to have improved.
Hmm,
Out of the 6 goals that he has scored, 3 of them are headed goals. So it's obvious his positional sense and his physical strength and everything is now being utilized to its fullest ability, because you have players like James and Digne supplying really good quality balls to him.
right. The other important player who has had a good start to the season, I would like to point is Kane.
Right.
Contrary to the first game that Spurs played against Everton, we were skeptical about Spurs, and until then they did not have a good transfer window as well.
Yeah.
But the second game after against Southampton, where Kane made 4 goals for Sun, and I think that's a game that he has added
Yeah, that's come slightly surprising actually. Like Kane, you associate Kane as being like a clinical finisher,
goal scorer.
yeah, and someone who always plays in the box. And suddenly this year he seems to be dropping deeper and playing Son and Lucas Moura in. I mean, it all points towards really good signs if Gareth Bale can hit proper fitness. Just imagining a front line of Son and Kane and Bale it can be frightening.
It can be.
Yeah. And taking that point further from Kane, I mean, even Son Heung-min has had an incredible start to the season. Of course, you'll have to forget the first game of the season that Spurs had.
Hmm.
It was a terrible performance against Everton. But then suddenly, from the second game week onwards, Jose seems to have really drilled his message across that they need to get their act together.
Hmm.
And that game against Southampton actually seems to have turned the momentum of the players. And Son Heung-min particularly, he scored 6 goals at an xG of 1.91.
Hmm.
He's actually scored 4 more goals than what he was supposed to.
Right.
But His key passes per 90 last season was 1.4, and this season his key passes per 90 is 3.5,
Hmm.
which means that the link up between Son and Kane is really, at the top of their game.
Right.
So if Spurs can somehow maintain this, if they can sustain this partnership between Kane and Son, and then add Bale on top of that, they can really be in for a good season.
But you would also have to look at the data set. We only have 4 games. It's too early in the season.
Yeah, that should be the disclaimer of this episode, by the way. We just have a sample size of 4 games. So, yeah, don't take these stats
Yeah,
as a benchmark.
but still, it's incredible anyway.
Yeah,
Kane, I think, is the best player, I think, in the 4 games that have been played, along with James Rodriguez.
right,
But others who were in contention I would include Wilson, Callum Wilson,
right.
Wilfred Zaha,
Yeah,
and I think Ings again would have a very very good season this year. Southampton in general haven't been playing well, but Ings has looked brilliant, and I think he will have another good season.
right. Talking about Zaha and, talking about a player carrying an entire team on his shoulders, it reminds me of Jack Grealish
Hmm.
and the kind of beginning to the season that he has had. I mean, the entire Aston Villa team. But if you look at Jack Grealish's stats particularly, he's operating at an XG of 1.1, but he's already scored 3 goals. Of course, it's not sustainable. So Jack Grealish last season he actually had an expected assists of 7.6,
Hmm.
but he actually registered only six assists.
Right.
Whereas this season, his so far he has had an expected assist of 1.6, but he has registered 3 assists,
Hmm.
which is quite clear, which shows that the Aston Villa team is now beginning to finish off the chances that he creates,
Right.
which is an indicator, obviously, of the transfers that Aston Villa have made.
Hmm.
Ollie Watkins has come in and immediately started firing for them.
Right.
But man, Jack Grealish, we really have to talk about him. We always knew he's the man for Aston Villa. Even when Aston Villa was relegated, they knew that he would take them back up. He became the club captain at such a young age.
Hmm.
And last season also he had 8 goals and 6 assists, despite having such an average squad around him.
Yeah.
But this time with slightly better players, and he himself looks like he's in the form of his life.
Yeah.
It seems like a good decision not to have gone to United at this point, because he's carrying this Aston Villa team with such plump, and it just looks good at the moment for him.
Yeah.
His key passes per 90 has also increased from 2.5, it's up to 3.3 now. So obviously this Villa team is in a good form right now, and Grealish is really the main man behind them.
Yeah. They've improved drastically in the other side of the pitch as well in the defense.
Yeah,
Tyron Mings, I would like to point out, he's been amazing in the 3 games that Villa have played,
yeah,
and to an extent, it is because of the signings that they've made, and that
yeah.
has given them a huge lift.
Matthew Cash also has been a good
Matthew
signing.
Cash. Hmm.
And talking of defenders, another defender that I really want to talk about, Tariq Lamptey. Man,
Mm.
I mean, as a Chelsea fan, I'm really sad to see him leave Chelsea, and now he's excelling at Brighton. But as a neutral, as a football fan, I'm also very happy that he actually left Chelsea, because obviously you have Reece James, you have Aspilicueta. It would have been difficult for him to compete against them and get a starting spot in the team.
Mm.
So really kudos to him to like decide and take that step that he wants to leave and
Play.
get play time, yeah, at any other club.
Right.
And he's really shown it. I mean, especially the game against Newcastle where they beat them 3-0.
Mm.
He just outplayed Alan Sen Maxima in the beginning. Then he had Ryan Fraser, who is an experienced Premier League winger.
Mm.
He was opposite him, and he really outplayed both of them with just so much maturity. He loves to take on a player. He dribbles the ball so well.
Hmm.
He delivers such great crosses. He plays such good short passes with the center backs behind him and the
Hmm.
midfielders ahead of him.
Hmm.
He's such an assured player at such a young age. It's very exciting. I mean, I just love watching him.
Well, not only against Newcastle, even against the big teams, Brighton in general, along with Lamptey, have been amazing. Even against Chelsea, before Reece James scored that absolute blinder,
Yeah.
Brighton were in the game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They were, in fact, in the driving seat in that game.
Yeah, even against United, again they were unlucky, and I feel for them, to be honest, that they lost that game after the final whistle.
Yeah,
And I feel for them because they played amazingly. And Lamptey, what to say about that kid? He has made other players look better because of him.
yeah,
Trossard plays in the same wing as Lamptey does, and
yeah,
he's got lots of scoring opportunities where he can score from outside of the box because of Lamptey. And the overlapping runs that Lamptey does, he takes the fullbacks along with him,
yeah,
and that makes a lot of space for the midfielders, the Trossards or Alzate,
yeah,
even Mope for that matter. And
yeah,
credit to Lamptey and credit to Graham Potter for that.
yeah. I mean, for me, the best part about watching Lamptey, he's so fearless.
Hmm.
He's absolutely fearless. Any winger in front of him, he's absolutely not afraid to take him on, dribble past him, and take the ball further forward. It's just incredible. I love this guy. I am just so excited to see how he grows from here.
Hmm.
And then again, talking about fearless, you have to talk about Leeds United,
Hmm.
and then you have to talk about Patrick Bamford. I mean, this guy also, he was written off almost by everyone that Leeds will have to sign a striker, and they have signed a striker.
Rodrigo.
But still, yeah, Bamford still has scored 3 goals, and he has somehow proven that he can still play at this level.
Hmm.
He has 3 goals from an XG of 1.4, and his stats from last year in the championship were also not bad at all. And if he can even get two-thirds of that in the Premier League, he will have a decent season. I can see him scoring 10 to 15 goals in the Premier League this season,
Hmm.
which is not bad. Which is not bad for a team that has just been promoted.
Right. I would like to point out the most important player in the Leeds lineup, that is Calvin Phillips.
Calvin Phillips, absolutely.
He makes them tick. He's the one player who links up the defense and the attack.
Yeah, I mean, the formation that Bielsa plays, it's incredible that you just have one player taking care of so many responsibilities in that midfield,
Yeah.
and he does it with such an assurance. I mean, even for England, he doesn't look out of place at all. It
uh,
looks like he has owned that place for many years.
it's not a surprise that he's playing for England now, and he was selected for England before he started the Premier League game against Liverpool.
Yeah,
And it's credit to Bielsa, to be honest.
yeah. I would also like to mention two Leicester players here. We haven't spoken about Leicester City.
Mm.
Apart from that one game against West Ham, they have been performing well.
Yeah.
And two players that have really brightened up this season. Timothy Castagne has transitioned so well from Atlanta, from Serie A to EPL. His stats are absolutely identical to the last 2 seasons that he had at Atlanta, which shows that he hasn't needed any time to, adjust to the Premier League or anything like that.
Mm.
That's really good business by Leicester. I mean, they were short at fullbacks, and they've signed a very astute player.
He can play both positions, by the way.
Yeah, he can play at both the positions, and he really has good attacking positioning as well as good defensive qualities. And another surprising player from Leicester, I mean, Harvey Barnes and Jamie Vardy are looking good, but you need to talk about Dennis Pratt. He's been like this under the radar player. The number of key passes that he makes, that has really improved from last season. He was making zero point 0.7 key passes per 90 last season,
Mm.
but this time he's making 1.6 key passes per 90,
Right.
which means that he's really, he's making those advanced passes. Tielemans' numbers have actually dropped in that regard, which means that Tielemans is slightly playing more deeper and Pratt is getting to go forward,
Mm.
because Harvey Barnes has been used primarily as a winger And in the absence of James Madison majorly, Dennis Pratt has really improved. So yeah, he's also had a very good start to the season. And again, another very obvious answer, but I think Mo Salah has had a very good start to the season.
Hmm.
He scored 5 goals so far, and his numbers have increased. And particularly, he's taking more shots. It seems these 4 games he has had a shots per 90 of 4.75 compared to 4 shots per 90 last season.
Hmm.
But more interesting for me is that his key passes per 90 has gone up from 1.8 to last season to 3.5 this season. That's almost the double of last season.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a really promising sign. I mean, Salah you associate generally with goal scoring, but if he maintains this number of his key passes,
Mm,
you could see him getting more assists as well.
true. But again, I would like to point out that we have a very short data set.
Yeah, again, yeah, that is there. So yeah, that is, I think, we've covered a decent amount of players who have had a good start to the season, I think.
Hmm.
I think my pick for a player who has had a really good start to the season is Jack Grealish.
I agree to that. Okay, so moving on from players who performed really well in the start of the season to players who have been underperforming.
Right.
Who do you think are the players who have been underperforming in the first 4 matches in the Premier League?
Mm, I mean, obviously, in terms of underperforming, I think Sheffield United are right up there. But I was looking at the individual stats of Wolves players. I was particularly fascinated by Adama Traore's stats. He's one player I really like to watch. Just so much fun to watch. The way he runs with the ball, the way he uses his strength
Hmm.
as an advantage, and also the fact that he can play in multiple positions. It's
Right.
just so much fun to watch him. Again, he's also a very fearless footballer.
Hmm.
So I was taking a look at his stats, and his shots per 90 has also gone down from 1.5 to 1. His key passes has also gone down from 1.7 to 1. So there's a slight decrease in all of his stats. His XG per 90 is also down to 0.06, and his expected assists per 90 is also down to 0.08, which can look worrying on the surface.
Hmm.
But you also have to consider the fact that he's been used in multiple positions.
True.
Out of the 4 games this season, he's started 2 games at right wing back, and 2 games he started as a right winger. Also, I was looking at some defenders, and in particularly Liverpool defense.
Hmm.
Last season, we associated Liverpool defense with not just clean sheets, but also, their attacking potential.
Hmm. Right.
But this season, Liverpool, their defense seems to have lost a little bit of confidence. They conceded 3 goals against Leeds, and then they had that absolute shocker against Aston Villa.
Yeah. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I mean, that was just incredible game of football where you just saw a champion team falter 7 times in 90 minutes. That was just incredible.
Well, leading up to that game, Liverpool's defense looked a little shaky. Before the Aston Villa game too.
Yeah, and then I was really looking for other players, players who had really good seasons last time around and then somehow are really playing very bad this season, whatever 3 or 4 games that they have had this season. And then I stumbled upon this great void of Manchester United. And oh my god, their stats are horrible. Paul Pogba has had 0 key passes so far. Anthony Martial has had 0 key passes so far. I mean, just tell me about it. Man United, what has happened?
Well, there are lots of factors involving why they have been playing so badly. Bad recruitments, first of all, and along with the criticism also hasn't probably helped. And the other thing I feel is because they had such a brilliant end to last season, the expectations from them for this season was a little increased. And I don't mean that the finish that they had last season was it wasn't warranted, and they truly deserved it.
Right. It's just the transfer policy seems very absurd, and the structuring of the club and how they run,
Hmm.
it's a little bit bizarre from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, they the entire summer they were trying to sign Sancho, but they ended up not signing any right winger. I mean, you would expect a club like Manchester United would have a backup plan. They desperately needed a center back. They did not sign a center back. They signed Alex Telles at the last moment.
Mm.
You needed a left back. I mean, you could have planned for that way before. uh, Harry Maguire, oh my god, what has happened to him? He had such a terrible game. I mean, if there was to be an example of one player having the worst game of his life, it was him against Spurs. I mean, he was just awful in that game. I
Well,
don't want to I don't want to sound too terrible on United, but these
mm,
things are not to expected from a club like Manchester United.
well, I agree. And not only Maguire, but I think De Gea as well. I'm not sure what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is thinking, and why does he have three goalkeepers in his squad? I mean, three genuine goalkeepers who can start for teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I really did not get the thinking behind keeping Henderson on the roster.
Yeah.
If you wanted to keep him, he should be starting games
Mm,
because he genuinely is that good quality. But if you have someone like De Gea, you should have loaned him out again if he was happy to stay at Sheffield. If it was his personal decision to stay at United and fight for his place, then kudos to him. But as a club, I think they missed an opportunity there. Either cash in on one of their goalkeepers, or just play Henderson. Chelsea
mm,
did that. I mean, Chelsea had Peter Cech, but then they got Courtois back and they
Courtois.
played him.
Yep.
So you know which is your stronger player. You should play him.
Even Van de Beek. Why are you not starting him?
Yeah,
He's such a fantastic player.
yeah,
If Pogba isn't working for you, I understand Pogba started the first two games. I understand completely. But if he is not working for you, why don't you start Van de Beek? It's very difficult to talk about United in this regard, when they have been dominating Premier League for such a long time.
yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah, it is quite sad. It is quite genuinely sad, not just as a rival fan, but also as a neutral football fan, to see a good club like that, which has been run so well for such a long time,
Hmm.
just falter like this after a very successful long spell. So yeah, I'm hoping things come together for them going forward. But right now, it looks quite bleak.
The only bright spark in United is Marcus Rashford. I think the four games that I watched, Rashford is the only player who I think is trying to do something, along with Bruno Fernandes. Those are the only two bright spots for them.
Right. So let's hope moving forward, United sort of get their act together
Yeah.
and get some good results. So moving on, let's move to the final point that we wanted to discuss today.
Hmm.
The transfer window is over. Obviously, clubs can still sign players from EFL.
Hmm.
I would like to know what are your thoughts on the transfer window? Which club has had like a really good transfer window?
Chelsea have had an incredible transfer window. I mean, the quality of the signings that they have made, it's absolutely amazing. Spurs, uh, Spurs, if they had signed a centre back, I think they would have had the best transfer window, hands down. And Everton, just because the impacts that the new signings have made for them in such a short span of time. So I think I would like to add Aston Villa too in that mix, because the signings that Villa have made are genuinely very good signings, and they have made signings at very important positions that they were missing last season. I would say Chelsea and Aston Villa are my top two teams who have had a good transfer window.
Right, right, right.
Although Chelsea, the new signings for Chelsea haven't gelled yet, but the quality of the signings, you can't doubt that. And It's incredible that they signed 9 players in one transfer window, and all of the rival fans were jealous, genuinely jealous. I mean, Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, those two players are incredible. I don't know. I mean, if people might have seen Kai Havertz last season for Leverkusen, he has scored some absolutely gem of goals.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he reminded me of Bergkamp, some of the goals that he scored for
Yeah, yeah,
Leverkusen.
absolutely, absolutely. He really reminds of Burkamp with his height and the way he plays, his technicality, the way he moves around. It's very reminiscent of Burkamp.
Yeah, I just want to point out the signings that Chelsea have made: Werner, Hakim Ziyech, and Kai Havertz. These three guys can play any positions in the front three, along with the midfield. To be honest,
Yeah,
mainly front three. They can switch positions, and Lampard really has an incredible headache now to choose his starting lineup, and it's a very good headache, to be honest. But yeah, let's see how well they gel up now, and how soon they gel up. And all the Chelsea fans might be hoping that this happens very quickly.
yeah,
The only dark spot in an otherwise very good transfer window that Chelsea have had is they have had difficulties moving players out.
yeah. I really feel sad for Drinkwater. He hasn't played a game for 2 years, and it's just such a sad state of affairs to see him not play in his prime years.
Hmm.
I mean, such a bad timing for him to come to Chelsea. You know, you come into Chelsea and then you have a manager like Sari who doesn't prefer you
Hmm.
simply because he prefers a different system and you can't play in that system. So it's just such bad timing, and then injuries have also not helped him. So yeah.
Well, talking about bad luck, I would like to point out Van Ginkel.
Bro, don't get me started with that guy.
I mean, it's incredible that he has spent so many years at Chelsea and still hadn't had a game.
Hasn't played a single game, keeps extending his contract every year and going back on loan to Netherlands.
He's at
And
PSV right now, right?
yeah, and just been injured almost 70% of his career. Is just incredible.
Hmm. The second team who have had a very good transfer window, in my opinion, was Aston Villa. Apart from the transfer ins that they've got, I think the most important signing that they have made is Jack Grealish.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Grealish signed a 5-year contract.
Yeah,
They could have easily sold him for 80 million,
yeah,
and United could have easily paid that amount.
yeah,
But credit to Villa that they stuck with him, and he's already showing signs that how incredible a player he is, and he's also playing well for England
yeah. Credit to him as well for staying with Villa.
for staying with them. Yeah, but I'm sure that the club must have assured him of good signings, and they stuck to it, and they built upon the Grealish signing with Ollie Watkins from Brentford. He's not Said Ben Rama, but Watkins was still incredible for Brentford last season,
Yeah,
and he was incredible against Liverpool too, scoring that hat trick.
yeah,
Barkley too.
yeah,
They needed someone a number 8,
yeah,
and they got him.
yeah.
Ross Barkley was a good signing too.
Barkley's average positioning in the Liverpool game was actually he was the furthest forward. It was quite something to watch that game.
Hmm. One of those important signing that they made was Martinez.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Last season, when Leno got injured against Brighton, most of the Arsenal fans thought it's going to be a very bad end to the season, and in came Emiliano Martinez. The one thing that stuck when I first saw him play, the first game that I saw him play, was his collecting. He did not punch the ball, or he did not drop the ball. He used to collect the ball, catch the ball.
Yeah, yeah, true.
That's an incredible quality to have for a goalkeeper, and surprisingly, he was very good with his feet as well, playing from the back.
Mm-hmm.
So Martinez was an incredible signing. So yeah. Villa, I think will finish top 10 for sure this season.
Hmm.
I believe so.
Hmm. I'd really like to talk about the transfer window that Spurs have had.
Hmm.
It's Mourinho's second season at a club.
Hmm.
That's when he particularly has some kind of success, has had some kind of success at all his clubs. They have signed Vinicius, this 24-year-old striker from Benfica,
Hmm.
as a backup to Harry Kane. That backup striker to Harry Kane has always, like, for a long, long time, it has been a problem area for Spurs. Anytime Kane has been injured, they haven't had a decent backup, and they've had to experiment deploying Dele Alli as a false nine or Son as a striker.
Hmm.
So Vinicius should be a good addition. He scored 19 goals and had 5 assists last season for Benfica. So yeah, that's a decent signing. Then they've gotten Doherty and Region as fullback options, and I think both those signings are absolutely fantastic. Doherty and Region, both of them can play either as part of a back four or as wing backs when they play a back three. Both of them had really great last seasons at Wolves and Sevilla, respectively.
Right.
Then they signed Pierre-Emile Højbjerg from Southampton. That's again a very astute signing. He's come in pretty cheap and he's an experienced Premier League midfielder.
Right.
Although he's had sort of a shaky start to the season, much like the entire Spurs team, but he seems to be slowly getting into this team and improving. It's a good base for players like Ndombele and Son and Kane and Lamela,
Lo
Mora.
Celso.
Yeah, he provides a good base for these players to play on from.
Hmm.
The only point, yeah, as you mentioned, if only they could have signed a centre back, because they haven't replaced Vertonghen, who left. They only have Davinson Sanchez and Alderweireld as their first choice, and Eric Dyer as their first choice centre backs.
Right.
So if they had probably signed another centre back, they were in for Skriniar apparently. If that had
Yeah.
happened, it would have been an absolutely incredible transfer window for them,
Yep.
because they also got Gareth Bale back. If he gets back to full fitness and if he puts his heart into the game, which he mostly will for Spurs, it will be really great. And things are looking upwards for Spurs now. There's definitely a lot more pressure on Mourinho now
Hmm.
to get this team to deliver. Spurs
Yeah.
again haven't had a big trophy for a long, long time, so there's massive pressure on Mourinho to deliver now. And I think the best transfer window, apart from Chelsea, of course, belongs to Everton. They've gotten players like Allen, Doucouré, James Rodriguez, Ben Godfrey, and Olsen. It's fantastic the kind of window they have had. Ancelotti is probably my favorite manager in the Premier League. He's gotten this team to play as if they have been playing together for almost 4 or 5 years now. James Rodriguez, I mean, he just doesn't look like it's his first season in the Premier League. He's performing at an incredible level and he seems happy to be playing for Everton. And more importantly, what I would like to say is that it's not the incomings, it's the outgoings as well that Everton have carried out in this window. I'm just going to read out a list of players that Everton have let go this window. So Schneiderlin has gone, Leighton Baines has retired, Cuco Martina, Omar Nias, Stecklenburg, Jibril Sidibe, Theo Walcott, and Sandro Ramirez, of all people. These guys have all been moved on from Everton. So, all in all, I think it's just incredible the kind of window they've had. They've not only addressed all the issues that they had in the starting lineup, but they've also cleared a lot of the deadwood. And a player like Gylfi Sigurdsson is now a really decent backup option for them. Even signing Ben Godfrey at centre back, that was one problem area that Everton had. They were over reliant on Yerry Mina and Michael Keane as centre backs.
Hmm.
They didn't have another possible replacement at centre back, especially because they were not getting Kurt Zuma back on loan, or they were not getting Tamori on loan as well.
Right.
So they were relying on these two and Mason Holgate as the centre backs. But now they've gone and signed Ben Godfrey, who's a very promising young centre back. And if you look at all these signings, they've all been cheap signings. And none of these signings are where they've had to spend extravagant amount of money. And signing Allen and Dukure in that midfield, like that midfield was the biggest problem area for Everton.
Yeah.
And not just last season, the couple of seasons before that as well, they were not able to get that midfield going. The way Allen and Dukure have come in and steadied that midfield is just absolutely incredible. The way that has enabled Richarlison and Calvert Lewin to perform, it's fantastic to watch. I'm just very happy for this Everton team and Everton fans that they are getting to see this brand of football, this kind of football, after such a long time. It's really good to see.
Especially after Liverpool have won the league.
Just here's a fun question for you. Where do you think this Everton team will finish this season?
Oh, that's a tough one. Top six for sure. If not top four, top six for sure.
I kind of would like to, just for the sake of it, but like for the fun of it, but I would really not be surprised if they finish top four. And in fact, I'd be really happy if they finish top four. Yeah. Moving on.
So, worst transfer windows.
Hmm.
Who do you think had the worst transfer window?
I have three contenders for that. So I looked at West Ham, and as we were talking initially about West Ham, at the beginning of the season, things just looked absolutely in a very bad state.
Yeah.
West Ham fans themselves constantly talk about how their owners are really at fault for the way the club is run.
Hmm.
The signings that are made, their issues are rarely addressed. I mean, they have needed a midfield makeover for a long, long time.
Yeah.
They're fortunate that Declan Rice came through, and Mark Noble has been playing in midfield forever. He's still their primary backup option. Thankfully, they got Thomas Susek last season on loan, and now they've made that deal permanent. But they were basically relying on Declan Rice and Mark Noble.
Yeah.
Even in defense, I mean, they had Issa Diop, but then the other options have been Balbuena and Ogbonna, which really don't strike you as a strong defense.
Hmm.
And right back has also been a very problem position for them. But now finally they've signed Kufal for 5 million,
Hmm.
who seems to be playing right back for them, or right wing back. So yeah, I mean, they've at least finally made a signing in centre mid and at right back.
Yeah.
But apart from that, they haven't done anything in the transfer window. And in fact, they are still reliant on Mark Noble as their primary backup in midfield.
True.
But again, why I'm saying they had a bad window is also because they let go of Grady Diangana for a cheap amount of 18 million pounds. And it wasn't even to a club abroad, it was to West Brom, who are rivaling you directly for that relegation spot.
Yeah.
It's just a very, very baffling deal that you let go of such a promising youngster for a cheap price, that to a direct relegation rival. Although the way they're performing right now, fans might be happy. David Moyes has got them playing well,
Hmm.
particularly the last two games. It seems that things are clicking for them. But just imagine if they had a better midfielder in there alongside Susek and Rice. It would have really made a lot better for that squad. And even a defender, a good defender alongside Issa Diop would really help them a lot. So West Ham is one team. I also feel Crystal Palace have had a very uh
Lackluster.
yeah, lackluster is the word actually. They just made that one signing of Eze,
Hmm.
and then they got Nathan Ferguson, and they got Batshuayi on loan from Chelsea. So they just got those three signings in, and that was about it for Palace. My main complaint with Palace is that it's a very aging squad. Their defense, all of the players are they're getting on with their age, especially after Gary Cahill got injured.
Hmm.
They should have signed a centre back. They are having to play Kuyate at centre back. Although credit to them that They have promoted Tyreek Mitchell in the absence of Van Aanholt,
Yeah.
and they signed Nathan Ferguson. Although it's sad that he got injured,
Yeah, but it is surprising that they did not sign a center
they
back.
really needed a centre back, especially someone like Godfrey would have helped. That would have been a really good signing. He went for 25 million pounds.
Hmm.
I'm sure Palace could have easily put in a bid for him. It's a very aging defense, and even in midfield, they have
Hmm.
Milivojevic and they have McCarthy and MacArthur.
MacArthur.
So, but that's about it with their midfield.
Yeah.
There isn't a midfielder in that squad who can make things happen, can progress with the ball. I think they really should have signed a center back and a center midfielder. Otherwise, the good thing about Palace is that it's a very settled starting 11. Each of those players have been playing in that position for over a year now. They're very well used to Hodgson's tactics. They know
Hmm.
how to play against a big team and they know how to play against a smaller team. Zaha can carry that team really well. They've come close to relegation fights a couple of times in the last couple of years, but still they ended last season pretty well. And this season also, that win against United at Old Trafford was really well deserved.
Hmm.
So they look like they can perform on the day, but a couple of signings would have really helped them a lot.
Yeah.
And finally, I think for me, a team that sort of had a bad transfer window is Burnley.
Hmm.
Now, Burnley, I think somehow I really like how Sean Dyche has set this team up and how they have been performing in the last 2 or 3 years. I appreciate it when you have limited resources and you're a club trying to establish yourself in the Premier League. It's a good approach that Sean Dyche has, and the way he has created that culture at Burnley, where you have player after player coming from the academy and establishing themselves in that set system.
Hmm.
They had Ben Mee, then they had Kevin Long, then they had Tarkovsky, now they have Jimmy Dunn coming through. Similarly, they have Josh Brownhill coming through.
Yeah.
They had Dwight McNeil come through.
Yeah.
So it's a very good squad. I mean, I appreciate that Sean Dyche likes to keep his squad at a minimal level. He likes to play with the same 18 players for a longer period of time.
Hmm.
Having said all of that, it was a very inactive window for them.
Yeah.
They only signed Dale Stephens from Brighton for a meager 1.5 million pounds, I think.
Hmm.
And whatever players that they let go, like Hart and Aaron Lennon and Jeff Hendrick, they all were let go for free. So basically, it was a very inactive window for them.
Yeah.
They did try to sign Harry Wilson from Liverpool. That signing would have really helped them a lot, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That deal failed, and they haven't made any further signings. They haven't even attempted to make any further signings. But I think Sean Dyche has confidence in his current players. They haven't begun this season well. They are right now in the bottom three.
Yeah.
They'll get going at some point of the season, I'm sure. But a refresh on that squad was really required this season. I think they have performed to the best of their ability, but it was time to get some new faces in that squad, but they haven't. So I just hope that it doesn't become a point of regret for them at the end of this season.
Right. Well, I think there's only one team that has had worse transfer window, and there are two teams who have had okay transfer window, but they haven't really strengthened their squad.
Hmm.
One is Sheffield United.
Okay.
Sheffield United have bought in about 4 or 5 players, and they are mostly in defense. Jaden Bogle, Max Love, and Aaron Ramsdale. Aaron Ramsdale was a good signing, I think,
Yeah.
even though he has been a little shaky at the start of the season. But I think he's a very good goalkeeper.
Yeah, he'll have a decent season, I'm sure.
Yeah. But the main position I think that they should have been looking for was that creative midfield position, because that is the one position that they have been lacking. The last season, the only reason that Sheffield got so many wins was because of their defense, and mostly because of the goalkeeper that they had in Dean Henderson. They were able to counter. and score that one odd goals and win the game by a goal, by a one goal margin or a two goal margin. But it's not going to be the same this season for sure. Lots of teams are going to have already read them and have seen them how they play, and all the other teams have improved in their problematic areas, but not Sheffield United. Ryan Brewster is a good signing, I believe, although he's yet to prove his mettle in the Premier League. But I think he's a good player. But yeah, they needed a creative midfielder. A very harsh opinion. I think Sheffield United is one of the teams I think who will be relegated this season.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't think so, but I can see what you're trying to say.
I mean, I can be easily wrong, but from the way I have seen them play, I don't see much encouragement or good signs. We have to see how Ryan Brewster plays now, but I don't see good signs. City also had a not a bad transfer window, but not a good transfer window in my opinion. At the start of the transfer window, it was rumored that City are going to spend about 300 million euros, and they're going to sign Messi and whatnot. And they ended up with Ake and Ruben Dias, who are very good defenders. But apart from Ake, I don't think the other centre back that they were looking for, Ruben Dias, was their first priority. I also think that they should have gone for one another centre forward. So yeah, they faltered a bit this season in the transfer window, which otherwise they don't. They usually get their targets pretty soon, but not this season. The club who had a worst transfer window was obviously United. We already spoke about United in Lens,
Mm.
but the recruitment policy of United is already a little bit questionable, as we already spoke about it. But the worrying part is, I understand that the right wing position for them is important. I also understand that they thought that Dortmund is playing negotiation tactics with them and whatnot. But in those days leading up to the deadline day, they could have approached other targets, right? They could have approached a centre back position or a quality left back position or a defensive midfielder position, other areas where they could improve until they wanted to start discussions about Sancho. They could have approached other targets and probably signed them, but they didn't. And there's a lot of problem in that squad, and I'm not sure how it will be addressed. It's very interesting to see how United's future transfer windows look like. It's very interesting, but they have had a very bad transfer window.
Right, right.
Let's discuss about the top four for this season. Let's start with you. Who do you think is top four this season?
Top four this season, I think Liverpool for sure winning the league again,
Hmm.
and I think City will definitely finish top four. As of now, I don't think I'll be able to rank who's coming second, third, and fourth. But I can say with a certain amount of certainty that City will finish top four.
Hmm.
I can say with a certain amount of certainty that Chelsea will also finish top four.
Yeah.
But then that fourth spot is where things get very interesting. As of now, I think out of Arsenal, Spurs, Everton, and Leicester, I think the best positioned club to finish in that fourth spot is probably Spurs.
Hmm.
They're very well equipped, I think, to finish in that fourth spot. Most essentially because they have that front line of Kane, Son, and a fully fit Gareth Bale.
All right.
Yeah, I think that should be my top four.
My top three is the same, not in the sequential order though. Liverpool, City, Chelsea, and Arsenal.
Okay, okay.
That is my top four.
Mm.
Obviously, I had to go with us.
That was the episode, guys. I hope you liked listening to us rant about random stuff from the 4 game weeks that we have had in the Premier League. Hopefully, next time we'll catch up about some more fantasy football stuff. Let's see how our predictions fare, and The players that we have so far talked about in this episode, let's see how they perform in the next couple of game weeks, and also in terms of fantasy as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was this episode, guys. Hope to catch you all soon. Do share our episodes and let us know in the comments what you think. What would you like to listen more about? And anything that you want to ask us about, please let us know.
Yep. And best of luck in your fantasy football. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.